Welcome back, and in case you're new, I'm Casey. So in today's video I'm going to show you how I made a custom speaker box for my Ram 1500. However, this could be applied to a SUV, van, even a boat if you'd like. So let's get to it. So the first thing we need to do is protect our carpet, and I'm going to do this by putting down a layer of painter's tape. I'll also be adding another layer of plastic later. After getting some measurements, I'm going to take and use this OSB, and with some help I cut it down to size. You really need to make sure you're wearing a mask when you work with this stuff, as it is quite bad on the lungs. And I put it in to make sure it fits right. Now I'm going to mark it out as to where I'm going to cut it so it has a correct profile. Now, even though I marked both sides, I took the side that I thought turned out better, I cut that out, and then I'm using that as a template for the other side, so that way I know they're going to turn out identical. After cutting that side out as well, now we can do another test fit and see how it fits and refine it if needed. Now I need 2 layers, so I'm just going to copy it onto another piece, and I'll be cutting that out as well. Now, using a smaller piece of wood, I just kind of made a demo version, something that I could easily just check how everything fits and make sure I get the speaker where I want it. And I just use that as a little bit of a template. Now I can cut out the holes for the speakers and make sure to give them a test fit. And of course we're going to repeat this for the other side. So now I'm just taking and marking out a guide of what I'm going to cut out. And this is going to form the rim of the empty cavity space. While I'm doing that, I would like to talk a little bit about these speakers. Normally Sony's aren't my first choice. I would probably go with like a JL. And I'm sure there's quite a group of people that would agree. However, these ones are kind of special. I inherited these from my brother-in-law that's no longer with us, so I'm pretty proud to be rocking these in my truck either way, and they do sound good, so I'm happy to have them. And now my particular speakers have to have a divider in between them, so I'm just going to add a divider in about the center. Now it's important to check your steps on the way. Right here I checked it, and it turned out that it wasn't quite right, so I had to go back through and I had to make it a little bit smaller. And then of course we got to cut these out as well. Now here's the layer of plastic I was talking about. It'd be a real shame if you ended up getting any resin on your carpet. I decided last second I was going to use a little bit of hairspray just to help hold it down. This actually worked pretty well. A little trick to get it so it's in all in the little nooks and crannies and corners is to just stuff a whole bunch of blankets in there and put a little weight on it, which I had to pack things up for the day anyway, so it worked out well. So now you can see the frame piece fits in here nicely, and I got it in here just to double check that everything's going as planned. Now we're going to start working on the resin and fabric. A lot of people would think that you'd use fiberglass for this, however fleece that you can just pick up at the fabric store is a lot cheaper, and it's a lot easier to work with when it comes to speakers like this. This resin, by the way, is available at Walmart or if you got a True Value by you. So for my situation, right below this is the actual cab of the truck, so it's got a lot of reinforcement. However, if you were doing this in like the trunk of a car or something that didn't have a sturdy backing, you'd need to reinforce it. A lot of people will use like barbecue screws for it. Another option is just picking up some dowel rods from the hardware store. It's important that we don't spill too much on the top surface of this, as it does need to match up with that other board as good as we can. Now I'm going to repeat the same process by putting in some blanketing with some weight in there. And of course I got the plastic in there to protect it. And as you can see, we didn't get every single area, but we have it so it's in a rough shape, and we can take and touch that up in a minute. Depending how much you mix up at once and how well you saturate it will kind of determine how many coats you need. I would say anywhere from 2 to 4 is good. 6 if you're really doing them thin and you're not really dumping it on there. I ended up doing 4 on this. So this is the second layer, and I'm just making sure to get anything that was still dry from the first time just to maintain its shape. And as you can see, I did the other side just the same as this one. Now I didn't quite plan for this coming out, so I ended up having to take and notch it out, which turned out perfectly fine anyways. Plus, of course, it gives me another excuse to thank the wife for this tool. So now at this point we can take it out and remove all the plastic off of it. As you can see, that's exposing a lot that hasn't been gotten thoroughly saturated, so I'm going to apply another 2 coats to it. After cutting off the extra bits, we need to take and sand this, and I'm using this piece of wood just to check for which areas may be sticking up still, because I want this to match up with the other board as good as possible. Now to attach the two together, I chose liquid nails, and the big reason for it is because of the fact it does have a filling property to it, and we need to make sure that this is absolutely airtight. So I applied a bunch to any cracks that I thought might leak, and then of course I went around the whole perimeter with it. At first I was planning just to clamp it, but then I realized that screws will do a much better job, and it's like having 100 clamps in there. Here's a little secret for you guys. In order to get rid of the smell of that resin, because it can linger around for ages, take and apply a layer of paint to both the inside and the outside, and then when you go to put it back in somebody's vehicle, it's not going to smell like resin for a year. So now for the sides, I just took and mixed up some of the sawdust with some wood glue. I'm just going to fill that in, and I'm going to take and sand it all down. So at this point in the project, I decided to change my mind about something. I was originally just going to cut these out to match them for the cup holders below, but there's one thing I didn't like about the cup holders originally, and that's how low they sit. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to use the router here, and I'm just going to take and carve away where the cup holders are going to be now, and I'm only going to go that deep, and then I'm going to take and add some layers on top so that way I have a good amount to hold the cups. But that's going to effectively raise them up quite a bit. So if you didn't realize it, ideally you'd cut this out ahead of time and not try to router it out after the fact. And I'm going to apply the same steps here as sanding it, gluing it, screwing it, and adding some filler. So now I rounded over all of the edges. If you don't have a router, you could easily do this by hand as well. Something I would like to mention here is I wish I would have took a little more time to do a little more detail on the sanding. Now I wanted to add something a little extra, so I made this little jig up for my rotary tool, and this is going to carve out a notch. And the nice part about it is I measured it out where I can carve 2 notches, and they should be symmetrical. Now this is the rubberized undercoating I used. I do not recommend it at all. It splattered on there quite a bit. And I got some assistance in peeling off the tape. And I got these lights for like $6 off eBay, and they look a lot like neon lights, and I really like them, so that's what I did that for. And I just put a little glue to seal them in. Now I wanted the speaker wires hidden as possible, so I drilled a hole in the back, and to make it airtight I just filled it with hot glue and pulled it a little. Now I can take and mount them in, make sure everything fits nicely. Speakers require a certain amount of air volume to them, however you can trick this by adding this white stuff. This white stuff is polyfill. It's commonly used in like stuffed animals or quilts and things of that sort. As far as figuring out how much you would need to use of this, you would really need to go with the manufacturer's recommendations, as well as you can use a calculator online. Now I added some speaker covers. They weren't really necessary, but I thought that they were a nice touch, and just in case. Maybe I would decide to fold the seat up and haul something bigger back here. Alright guys, well there's my creation all said and done, and it does sound amazing. It probably won't over your phone or your computer, but in person it really does sound great. And I really like how the accent lights turned out. Hey, if you're new here, take and throw a comment below. Maybe put a build you'd like to see me do. Actually 2 people have commented, and I'm actually working on their builds. One of them I already was in the process of, but the other one's a new idea, so you know, maybe we'll chisel this one out. Anyways, till next time, have a good one.